Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Henry Higgins III, and recently we got our first look at Bill Skarsgård in the upcoming Crow reboot. Some images have dropped, as you can see here. This has caused quite the kerfuffle. Online there's been a ton of knee-jerk reactions, already writing the movie off based on the first image alone. Now, long-term viewers of the channel, or those who follow me on social media in general, will know that I am a huge advocate for remakes and reboots. But what you might not know is that I am also a huge fan of the Crow franchise, be it graphic novels, movies, or the TV show that was made. I have a signed copy of The Crow. After meeting James O'Barr at Wales Comic Con, getting a picture with him, he signed the graphic novel. I have all 4 movies on DVD, and I also have the Stairway to Heaven TV show that I had to import from the Netherlands to get that on DVD. On top of that, there are various artworks dotted around the flat and multiple figures too. Fun fact, the very first figure I purchased as a collectible was an 18-inch Eric Draven with motion activated movie quotes, and that was around 25 years ago. And I also have like this nice little one, which is a bespoke art piece of Eric Draven's loft apartment. And I also got, and try and get this in the shot, this is my most recent Crow figure that I got from Amazon about a month ago. So the flat is quite covered in Crow memorabilia. Not as much as the Harley Quinn stuff, she's everywhere, but the Crow does come a close second. Even my wrestling name, Draven Cage, was inspired by the Brandon Lee version, Brandon Lee's take on the character, coupled with my love for ECW legend Raven. So with that in mind, and the reason I'm mentioning that, is that I hope you understand that the following take isn't based solely on my appreciation for a good remake. Transition! One of the arguments I've seen online as a negative against this 2024 version being made is that the 1994 movie is perfect as it is, so why mess with it? My answer to that, first of all, is that the original, which is always in the argument for my favourite film of all time, will not be touched in any way by a reboot or a remake. Even if the Skarsgård-led movie is the biggest abomination imaginable, The Crow from 1994 will be unchanged. No lines will be rewritten, no scenes reshot, no characters recast. Brandon Lee's film will be as it ever was. Another argument is that because the original was so perfect, why remake it? That is a good point. But if we actually went with that philosophy, think of how many great movies we would actually have missed out on. Off the top of my head as I wrote the script, there are quite a few remakes that were objectively considered fantastic in their own right, and remakes of movies that the originals were considered absolutely fantastic in their own right. For example, Frankenstein from 1931 is one of my favourite movies. It's definitely one of my favourites from the Universal Monster era. We then had Kenneth Branagh's version that was also really, really good as a movie. It wasn't up to the 1931, but again, there's also the coming first bias of you getting first crack at it. But it was a really good movie and a film that told the overall premise of Frankenstein, but in a drastically different way. From that same era is Dracula with Bela Lugosi. So iconic even now, almost 100 years later, and yet the Dracula story itself has been retold so many times. A wee bit of trivia for you, Dracula himself is the most portrayed character in movie history. And yet, if we stuck to the "it was done good once, never do it again" mantra, then we wouldn't have had the gloriously camp Francis Ford Coppola version with Gary Oldman, where Goldman eats up the screen, and it visually and inspirationally is as iconic as the 1931 Lugosi film. Outside of horror, you also have Batman 89 and Spider-Man 2002. Films also near and dear to my heart as a comic book geek. Both actually had movies released prior to that, but they were spin-offs from their respective TV shows. So if we go just with cinematic offerings, both Burton's Batman and Raimi's Spider-Man were fantastic. However, if that was all we were allowed to have, there would be no Dark Knight trilogy, no The Batman, no Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield, which, in my opinion, they are arguably better than they're giving credit for, and no Spider-Man movies in the MCU. So my point here is that despite it being done well once, there is no reason not to try and do it well again. That leads me on to my next point: adaptations. There is an argument to be made as to whether adaptations of an already existing story can be considered original, as the original film isn't the original version of the story. As such, are the remakes or the reworkings remakes of the movie, or are the original retellings of the story in a different way? To compound that even more is when the adaptations take different approaches, which leads us back to the original talking point and the 2024 version of The Crow. If we go back to the 1994 version, for those who may not be aware, the Brandon Lee movie is actually a relatively loose adaptation of the story. For example, in the comic, in the graphic novel, Eric is not a musician. He doesn't even have a surname. The attack leading to their deaths is completely different. Top Dollar is a low-level drug dealer. The crow itself is not represented as a physical bird, it's more like a spirit, a manifestation. A character called Tom Tom doesn't appear in the film at all. He's essentially, in the movie, he's essentially replaced by Skank. And Eric himself, and this is a big difference, doesn't actually heal from his injuries. He just doesn't cause himself any harm, as he is a walking corpse. So contrast that with the movie. Top Dollar, played amazingly by Michael Wincott, is head of a criminal empire, a national, if not international, criminal empire rather than a low-level drug dealer. Eric is given the surname Draven. He can heal from injury, and the cause of death is a home invasion turned fatal, while T-Bird, the leader of the crooks, the gang in the graphic novel, is an underling to Top Dollar. From all the reports I've read and all the rumours and innuendo videos that I've seen, the 2024 version is going to be a much more faithful adaptation of the source material, meaning that, in essence, the film is not just a remake of the 1994 classic. Due to this, we can view Crow 94 and Crow 2024 in the same way as we do Batman 89 and Batman Begins. As we do Frankenstein and Dracula from the 30s to Frankenstein and Dracula from the 90s, and the Spider-Man movies that I mentioned earlier as well. It's a different take on the same story, and that is why I champion remakes and reboots. It's also worth noting from before that there have been 3 sequels to the 1994 Crow. The second movie is a direct sequel, as it shares a character, and there's a reason why the Crow has very similar face paint, and it's actually done really well in that movie. The fourth film is a pile of shit, but it is so bad, so campy, that it is ironically a fun watch. In that film, David Boreanaz and Dennis Hopper, they knew what film they were making and they just had fun with it. So it's a terrible Crow story, but it is a fun watch for all the wrong reasons. So there's also been a TV show. So a reworking of a 30-year-old adaptation of a 35-year-old comic shouldn't be an issue. Besides, if Crow 2024 is terrible, The original film will remain untouched and we'll still have that to enjoy. But if Crow 2024 is great and it tells a fantastic Crow story, we now have two awesome adaptations in our lives. Now, does all of this mean that you should be excited for this film? Absolutely not. If this is not for you, if this is not a movie you want to watch, then don't watch it. For those of us who want a new Crow story, for those of us willing to give it a chance, then we can watch it. And that way, for those who don't want to watch it, if they don't watch it, and for those of us who do want to watch it and we do watch it, everybody wins. Everybody gets what they want. People like me get to see the movie, and people with no interest get to not see the movie. Both sides happy. So with that in mind, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. Please like and share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Stay safe, look after yourself, and if the reboot or the idea of another adaptation has made you sad, just remember,
can't rain all the time.
Goodbye.